This is a story of a man who was determined to rescue his nation by any means necessary. From leading a failed coup to being sentenced to death to becoming a president and leading his nation from a dictatorship to a multi-party democracy. On today's African history, we look into the life of Jerry John Rawlings, Ghana's man of destiny. The life of Jerry John Rawlings is as mysterious as the circumstances of his childhood. At birth, he was named Jerry Rawlings John. He was born in Accra on 22nd June 1947 to a Ghanaian woman, Victoria Agodui, and a Scottish father, James Ramsey John. The relationship between his father and mother did not last, leading to John being brought up by his mother, who was a very strict woman. His mother would sometimes beat Rawlings in order to instill in him some values of honesty, integrity, and discipline. His mother was poor and struggled to raise money to put his child through a private school. But after some time, Jerry had the opportunity to attend the Achimota school, where he was very known and well liked because of his strong and fun-loving personality. His looks, which were striking, also earned him some friends. But what is remarkable about his life in Achimota is that he was known to not have tolerated bullying and later come to the defense of the younger students who were being mistreated. He went through his academic work with zeal, but after finishing his education at Achimota, Rawlings and his mother were disappointed as he did not obtain admission into any university for further education. This was a bitter pill to his mother, who always wanted him to become a doctor. Rawlings left his home and started engaging in odd works to make ends meet. It might be that this time it's when he understood the harsh realities and poor economic conditions that Ghana was facing. In August 1967, Rawlings' personal circumstances changed when he signed up as a flight cadet at Takoradi Air Force Station. When he signed his name as Jerry Rawlings John, the Air Force administration assumed that John was a second Christian name, so they recorded Rawlings as the surname, and has ever since been known as Jerry John Rawlings. Rawlings' commission into the Ghanaian army flamed up his childhood desire to make an impact in his society. Jerry John Rawlings had brought up to believe that people in authority should display the highest level of integrity, yet everywhere he saw numerous examples of people in authority illegally enriching themselves at the expense of the poor and the helpless. In 1966, Joseph Arthur Ankara overthrew Kwame Nkrumah in a military coup. After the military seized control of the country, they promised to abolish the corruption of the previous regime and improve the economic conditions of ordinary people. But the military failed to deliver on its promises. Rather, the economic conditions continued to deteriorate. This might have been hard for the young officer to comprehend, as he believed that the army should live by the highest level of honor, discipline, and integrity. Rawlings graduated from the army in January 1969, and he was commissioned as a pilot officer, winning the coveted Speedbird Trophy as the best cadet in flying the Su-7 Grand Attack supersonic jet aircraft, as he was skilled in aerobatics. In January 1977, Rawlings married his longtime friend Nana Okudu. A year later, in April 1978, Rawlings was promoted to the rank of flight lieutenant. During his service with the Ghana Air Force, Rawlings perceived a deterioration in discipline and morale due to the corruption in the Supreme Military Council. As promotion brought him in close contact with privileged classes and their social values, his view of injustices in the society hardened. He was thus regarded with some unease by the Supreme Military Council. Rawlings grew discontented with Ignatius Kutu Acheampong's government, which had come to power through a coup in January 1972. Achefong accused not only of corruption but also maintained Ghana's dependence on pre-colonial powers in a situation which led to economic decline and impoverishment. Rawlings was part of the Free African Movement, an underground movement of military officers who wanted to unify Africa through a series of coups. On 15 May 1979, 5 weeks prior to civilian elections, Rawlings and 6 other soldiers staged a coup against the government of General Fred Akufo, but failed and were arrested by the military. Rawlings was publicly sentenced to death in a general court-martial and imprisoned, although his sentiments on the social injustices that motivated his coup won him civilian sympathy. While awaiting execution, Rawlings sprang from custody on 4th June 1979 by a group of soldiers, claiming that the government was corrupt beyond redemption and that new leadership was required for Ghana's development. Rawlings led the group into a coup to oust Akufo government and the Supreme Military Council. Shortly afterwards, Rawlings established and became the chairman of a 15-member Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, primarily composed of junior officers. Rawlings and the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council ruled for 112 days and arranged the execution by a firing squad of 8 military officers, as well as 3 former heads of state, including Achefong, Akufo, and Akwasi Afifa. To Rawlings, these executions were considered as house cleaning to usher a new era. Elections were held on time. Shortly after the coup, on 24th September 1979, power was peacefully handed over by Rawlings to President Hila Liman, whose People's National Party had won the national election. During the inaugural ceremony, Rawlings warned Liman in a speech saying, "Never lose sight of the new consciousness of the Ghanaian people." To many people, this could have been enough. Rawlings could have been celebrated as a hero, a man who had saved Ghana from corrupt tyrants. But Rawlings wasn't done yet. He was a man determined to build and shape Ghana in his own philosophy. Believing the Liman regime to be unable to resolve Ghana's economic dependence and rampant corruption, Rawlings led a second coup against Liman and indicted the entire political class on the 31st December 1981. In place of Liman's People's National Party, Rawlings established the Provisional National Defense Council. On his first address to the people, Rawlings said, "Fellow Ghanaians, as you will notice, we are not playing the national anthem. In other words, this is not a coup. I ask for nothing less than a revolution, something that will transform the social and economic order of this country. Fellow citizens, it is now left to you to decide how this country is going to go from today. We are asking for nothing more than the power to organize this country in such a way that nothing will be done from the castle without the consent and authority of the people. In other words, the people, the farmer, the police, the soldiers, the workers, you, the guardians, rich or poor, should be part of the decision-making process of this country." Once in power, Rawlings followed a Marxist socialist policies and he developed close ties with other revolutionaries including Fidel Castro of Cuba, Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua, Sam Nujoma of Namibia, and Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. In December 1982, the People's National Defense Council announced its 4-year economic plan of establishing a state monopoly on export-import trade with the goal of eliminating corruption surrounding import licenses and shift trade from dependence on the Western markets. Unrealistic price controls were imposed on the market and enforced through coercive acts established against business people. The PNDC established workers' defense committees and people's defense committees to mobilize the population to support radical changes to the economy. Price controls on the sales of food were beneficial to the urban workers, but placed a burden on the 70% of the rural population whose income largely depended on the price of agricultural products. Rawlings' economic policies led to an economic crisis in 1983. Seeing his policies failing to deliver economic development, Rawlings decided to reverse the course of his action and introduce economic reforms. Rawlings established economic recovery program suggested by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund in 1982. The policies implemented under the recovery plan caused a dramatic currency devaluation, the removal of price controls and social service subsidies which favored farmers over urban workers, and privatization of some state-owned enterprises, and restraint on government spending. In the end, the economy recovered well. Ghana was one of the best performing economies in Africa in the 1990s. Rawlings established a National Commission on Democracy, NCD, shortly after the 1981 coup, and he employed it to survey civilian opinion and make recommendations that would facilitate the process of democratic transition. In March 1991, the NCD released a report recommending elections of an executive president, the establishment of a National Assembly, and the creation of the post of Prime Minister. The People's National Defense Council used the NCD's recommendation to establish a committee for drafting a new constitution based on past Ghanaian constitutions that lifted the ban on political parties in May 1992. The constitution was approved by a referendum. On 3rd November 1992, elections were held, and Rawlings won 60% of the vote, and the elections were deemed free and fair by international observers. 5 years later, in 1996, another election was held in which Rawlings was declared a winner again after amassing 57% of the votes. The 1992 constitution limited a president to 2 terms, even if they are non-consecutive. Rawlings did not attempt to amend the document to allow him to run for a 3rd term in 2000. He retired in 2001 and was succeeded by John Akufo, his main rival and opponent in 1996 elections. It was the first time in Ghanaian history that a sitting president peacefully transferred power to an elected member of the opposition. Akufo won the presidency after defeating Rawlings' vice president John Atta Mills in a runoff in 2000. Rawlings died on 12 November 2020 at Kolebu Teaching Hospital in Accra, a week after having been admitted for a short-term illness. According to some reports, his death was caused by complications from COVID-19. President Nana Akufo-Addo declared 7th-day period of mourning in his honor and flags flew at half-mast. Rawlings leaves a complicated legacy. To others, he might have been a tyrant. To others, he is a man who saved Ghana from self-destruction from greedy politicians of his day. All in all, Rawlings helped to build the modern Ghana as we know it today. He was also committed to seeing Africa achieve economic independence. Do you think Jerry John Rawlings was good for Ghana or not? Leave your comments in the comment section box below. Thanks for watching today's episode on African History 101. Have a great day.